The only hope I can offer is that this criminal regime, which is widely viewed around the world now as a criminal regime, is going to emerge weaker. Now, that doesn't mean that there's an end to their crimes, but it does mean that to the extent that they're driven out of Israel by Iranian and American pressure together in different ways, the forces which support Israel will become much weaker.
Welcome to the program. Our guest today joins us from Scotland, a country whose solidarity movement with the Palestinian people has been among the most vocal and sustained in Europe. Meg Napier is a founding member of the Scotland Palestine Solidarity Campaign, an organization that has spent decades campaigning for Palestinians' rights, from boycott and divestment action to street protest and political advocacy. Welcome to our program, Meg.
Thank you for having me, Osama. It's an honor.
Thank you. Meg, we see the escalation by the Israeli settler militia against the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, killing people, stealing livestock, grabbing land, cutting off roads, doing everything evil. So how do you read such practices by the Israeli settlers being supported by the Israeli official government?
I think it's in Israeli DNA to try to seize land and drive out Palestinians, steal animals, burn houses, take over the whole of Palestine, make life unbearable for Palestinians in the hope that they will be forced to leave. This is a constant since even before 1948, but since 1948, it's a core part of the Israeli settler colonial project.
Yes. Now, there are some voices in Europe, and I'm talking about some governments who call for imposing, and some of them impose sanctions on Israeli settlers involved in the crimes against the Palestinians. So how should we understand such move by some European governments? Is it a significant shift, or it's just like face value?
It's a response to popular opinion and anger.
Yeah.
But even in a place in Europe where the anger is greatest against Israel, say Ireland, the maneuvers of the government are very cynical, and it's the same across Europe. They continue to send weapons, they continue to finance the Israeli state through sweetheart economic deals in the EU and also Britain. But this pretends, because they're going to sanction Ben Gvir and Smotrich, but not Netanyahu. This is a bitter cynicism, because Netanyahu, Gvir and Smotrich, they're three of a kind. They're cut from the same cloth. And I think it's a cynical move to pretend that they're doing something significant, but really not. So, for example, the Israeli-Scotland football game was played here behind closed doors. There were no fans because they couldn't allow the public inside because there would be major protests. The same thing in Ireland, where the game that's coming up in October will be played behind closed doors, but now we hear it's going to be moved to a different country because Israel can't play in Ireland because people understand the crimes they're committing, and the anger, already high many years, is rising and rising and rising. And the same story can be told everywhere. There's a fantastic distance between the support of our elites for the Israeli state and its crimes and popular opinion, which everywhere, even in America, is very opposed to that. Very opposed to it.
Yeah, and do you think that, yes, it is a small step really by the European governments, because we know that Israel committed genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza, and what was expected from these governments and countries, like full sanctions on Israel as a colonial state, and not to single out a number of Israeli settlers or Israeli officials. But don't you think that bigger stories start with small steps, and this is one of the steps towards a bigger picture that may end up in full sanctions on Israel as a colonial power?
I don't think so, Osama. I was in Hungary recently to deliver a message to the Scotland women's team who had to play there against Israel. They couldn't play in Scotland. But even in Hungary, the government there has said the previous government was a very strong ally of Israel, very, very committed. But the new government says that if Netanyahu goes there, he'll be put in jail. Yeah. Everywhere we find popular opinion becoming angry, and Israel is really the most hated, the most despised state that anyone can remember since Nazi Germany. But at the same time, the governments which continue to support them, the British government was recently caught smuggling arms to Israel. They said they were going to ban them, but they turned up in Belgium on their way to Israel. So don't trust these governments. They're cynical. They supported the genocide for the last 2.5 years, most of them. But some are now beginning to break. Spain, Belgium, Ireland. My own government has finally denounced the genocide. But it's a different matter getting them to take action against it. But I think the bigger picture, Osama, is that, I'm sorry to say to my friends in Palestine, Israel is, of course, doing mass killing. And I think part of the reason that will continue is because they're losing the bigger war. Things have changed dramatically. Even Donald Trump, who invaded Iran together with Israel, even he is now telling Israel they have to stop. The boss is telling the junior that they have to stop what they've been doing in Lebanon. Not in Palestine, but that I think is not so far away. So the balance has moved against Israel. They committed one crime, which America could never forgive. Yeah. America can forgive genocide. It couldn't forgive failure. Yeah. And when Israel and America attacked another country in the area, Iran, and were defeated, failed to win, that began to break the link between America and Israel. And we see that. I've been predicting this for some time, and I could see it beginning several months ago, but now we see it openly. And I don't think Trump is lying when he begins to tell Israel that they cannot commit the crimes as normal in Israel, in Lebanon, not because they're crimes, but because they're not winning, they're not succeeding. So I think we now face the prospect of a much weakened Israel, where America doesn't support it to the same degree, where its potential Gulf Arab allies are going to keep their distance because of fear of an Iran that could stand up to America and Israel. So I think what we see is a bully, somebody who's reached the end of the road, who sees a major defeat and decides to kill people. Yeah. Is anyone surprised? That's what Israel does.
Yes, Mick. But you know that it is very difficult for the people anywhere to perceive that there is a split between the Israeli occupation and the American administration because of this very strong relationship and the unlimited support that the United States used to provide for Israel. So do you think that what's happening today vis-a-vis America, Iran, is a real split between Trump and Netanyahu, or it is just a play in order to reach an outcome that both parties, the Americans and the Israelis, agreed on? Or it's a real split from your point of view?
I think it's not my point of view, it's very real indeed. Yeah. I mean, if the attack on Iran had been successful, if they had been crushed, if they had put up the white flag and asked if they could join the American peace, then they would continue to be very good friends, no problem at all. But they failed. And because they failed, that changes everything. The Straits of Hormuz, if they're closed, they feel this in Idaho and Washington and in London and Berlin. And the power that has been revealed during the war since February is very dramatic indeed. You see, America's a big empire. They may invade Cuba, they've invaded Venezuela. They control very large parts of the world. Not all of it, but big parts of it. Yeah. They can take a defeat in the Gulf and still survive. But Israel cannot take such a defeat. This is a dramatic defeat for Israel, because if they don't have unquestioned American support, they are revealed to be a tiny country, very powerful militarily, but failing to defeat serious allies. And I would just say this, Osama, if people take a look at the long historical view, and it's difficult when your family is being attacked, but if you take a look at the long historical view, from 48, when Israel was set up and seized as much land as it could, till 67, America was not very interested in Israel. Not at all. It was French Mirage jets, which were used in 67. America gave a little bit of aid, but not much. After 1967, America realized that they have a policeman on the beat in the Middle East, and the aid to Israel went through the roof. That continued, especially after 79, because the other ally of America, the Shah of Iran, was overthrown in 79. And then Israel became even more important to attack any country that displeased America. But now we see that period is coming to an end, because Israel is unable to fulfill its fundamental function from the point of view of America, which is to be able to attack anybody that America is displeased with. That's finished now. I think it's a period of history that is coming to an end.
Yeah, but the statements by different Israeli military and political officials focused on the fact that Israel has nothing to do with the Iran-America agreement, and it's going to continue its aggression in Lebanon and to maintain the military presence in the south of Lebanon. At the same time, statements issued today that they are going to, take more parts of the Gaza Strip. They are controlling 60%, and they are planning to control 70% and maybe more. So do you think that Israel is going to listen to Trump in the end and stop that, mainly in Lebanon, or it's going to continue the way it's doing now?
Well, I think we all know that depends on how hard Trump is prepared to lean on Israel. It depends on Israel for bombs, for shells, for aircraft, for ships, for everything, in order to dominate the area as it has done for a long time. So if America decides to lean on Israel, Israel has no choice. Trump was right. He's the boss. Israel, Netanyahu will have to accept any deal that America signs with Iran. But if Iran makes it a precondition for the ceasefire or for the peace, that the occupation of Lebanon must come to an end, and that seems to be the position, will Trump allow Israel to occupy the south of Lebanon and destroy the world economy? I don't think so. I think the pressure on Trump will be enormous, and he will transmit that pressure to Israel, and that will be enormous as well. And I don't quite see how Israel, hated across the region, its Arab allies are now very worried about their exposure by it's not that opinions have changed. Trump has realized that he made a gigantic miscalculation when he and Israel attacked Iran. He now has to make, Osama, they're talking about how many billions? Is it 300 billion? The sums are eye-watering, which Iran is demanding from these Gulf family dictatorships as a price of peace. It's huge.
Yes,
this is a defeat for America.
Yes, Mick. So you are talking about a shift in the American policy towards the Middle East. But how would this play out when it comes to the Palestinian cause? Because what we see on the ground right now, more military escalation against the Palestinian people in the tents in Gaza, the people who are left with nothing, and the Israeli settlers' campaign in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem is unprecedented. And just yesterday, the Minister of Finance of Israel, Smotrich, said that Israel is going to resume its control of Hebron, which means killing what remained of Oslo Accord.
For sure. You're under the power of people who are just beasts, who are not interested in concealing their genocidal intention.
Yeah.
And that's the brutal, harsh reality. The only hope I can offer is that this criminal regime, which is widely viewed around the world now as a criminal regime, is going to emerge weaker. Now, that doesn't mean that there's an end to their crimes, but it does mean that to the extent that they're driven out of Israel by Iranian and American pressure together in different ways, the forces which support Israel will become much weaker. Mm-hmm. There'll be a drift away from Israel. I don't think it brings immediate succor to the violated people of Palestine. I don't. I think it's a terribly grim situation to be under the power of such people.
Yeah.
But I think Israel will be gravely weakened, and I think a road to freedom for the Palestinians could now begin to open up. I mean, it's always darkest before the dawn. Yeah. And I think it's a very dark period in Palestine, darker than anything else. But I do see the shift in the balance of power and the weakening of Israel as reducing their ability to act with impunity, not in the short term, because facing defeat, as in South Africa, when the apartheid regime could see defeat staring it in the face, it got worse. It was more brutal. They attacked their neighbours. It was they swung to a much more openly genocidal position. That's how settler colonies. That's the dynamic of them. Hope cannot come from inside that political entity. But I see the writing on the wall, to use a biblical metaphor, for the beginning of the end of the Israeli regime. And that doesn't mean that it's any less brutal. History proves otherwise.
Yeah. And my final question to you, Mick, because we can't talk about what's happening in Palestine and the region without talking about Palestine Action and the activists who were sentenced to prison by the British court days ago. If you give us your review on what happened with the activists of Palestine Action and the imprisonment sentence handed down to them.
Well, I and my friends face charges with a prison sentence of, in my case, 14 years for alleged terrorism. Yeah. So the repression is very real, but in a sense, it's a tribute. The support for what Israel is doing is plummeting. It's the extreme right who support Israel these days, and the government and corporate Britain. But among the majority of the population, no. How we translate that into action? Palestine Action provided one model, BDS provides another. But having to challenge this, having to channel this, comes up against the fact of repression, that people are jailed, people are intimidated. We see the corruption of the system very openly, where a judge tries 4 people, not for terrorism, tries them for something else, and then afterwards he sentences them for terrorism. We are now getting in Britain people sentenced for crimes that they were never charged with, and this is the true face of the legal system here, when defense of Israel, is at stake. So we don't suffer 1/1,000,000th of the pain that Palestinians suffer, but we're in the same situation. We have the same enemies. The same people who are supporting the genocide are supporting repression at home, cutting living standards, attacking the NHS, the National Health Service, and so on. So what the future brings and the speed with which we can achieve change, I can't give any assurances, Osama, but I can only say that our enemy is getting more and more vicious as it becomes weaker.
Mick, thank you very much. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from you, Osama Nazal, have a nice time.